Hey, everybody. Hope you are doing well, and so glad you are taking this time to be a part of this community life group time. Hope you are doing okay. Um, we're at that difficult middle of the semester, and I trust that you are making time and space to not only get your work done, but also care for yourselves in the way that you need to. We might touch on that just a little bit today in our devotional time. But let me just go ahead and jump into it here. I want to share this scripture from John 4. And it says, Jesus knew the Pharisees had heard that he was baptizing and making more disciples than John, though Jesus himself didn't baptize them. His disciples did. So he left Judea and he returned to Galilee. He had to go through Samaria on his way, and eventually he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from his long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. Now, there's a few things, and quickly want to point out in the scripture that we may not be able to relate to very well here. Just quick geographic lesson, doesn't say exactly where Jesus was in Judea. It's kind of a region. Doesn't say exactly where he was going in Galilee. It doesn't say exactly. It says Sychar is the specific place where he stopped to visit. But if you did a little Google image search, we're talking roughly, let's say, 90 to 100 miles that Jesus's trip was going to cover. So let's say he was at the halfway point, so 45 miles. To you and me, to hop now 45 miles is almost nothing, right? You hop in the car, that's going to take less than an hour to get somewhere. The full trip here from Judea to Galilee maybe would be the distance from Richmond to Cincinnati. So it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but no cars back then, right? So they're walking. Maybe they have some sort of pack animal that might be riding on, but good inclination is that most everyone back then walked. So it even says he was tired from his long walk and he sat down. It was the middle of the day. And he asked this Samaritan woman who comes to draw water for a drink. So Jesus was thirsty. So I want to just kind of put that as a frame for thinking about um, maybe what Jesus was thinking and feeling, more importantly, in this point of the story. It doesn't get into the details of why necessarily he felt like he needed to leave because of this. The Pharisees maybe were after him or trying to look for him, so he's going north to Galilee. But not to read too much into this, I believe that Jesus was not only physically weary, but he was probably emotionally weary. He was overwhelmed. He was probably anxious in these moments. I don't know about you, but if I think maybe someone is having ill feelings of me, I can think a lot about that situation and become overwhelmed a lot by those type of situations. Oh, was it something I did? Was it something I said? How should I handle this situation? And I use this phrase a lot with folks, but I like to think in those moments, it feels like I'm getting wrapped around the axle a lot. I can remember riding my bike a lot as a kid, and it happened more than once. And when it happens, it will always just kind of stuck in my psyche of when your shoelace would get stuck around the gears when you're riding your bike, and it just gets bound up, and you eventually just crash or fall down, and it takes time. You got to unwind it, and you got to spend time, and maybe even breaking the shoelace and trying not to break the bike. And it's stressful. Everything about it feels overwhelming. So, so thinking about Jesus in this moment, he sits down, he's exhausted. The last verse there even says that he was alone because the disciples, maybe he just sent them off because he needed a few minutes to be by himself. And the Samaritan woman approaches and he says, "Please give me a drink." Now, we're not going to get into any more of the story here of Jesus and his conversation with this Samaritan woman, but I just want to frame it and just set it around to Jesus finds himself in this physical, emotional place, and he chooses in this moment to show up in this way. He chooses to be present to the Samaritan woman, and we could say, well, he's doing that because he wants her to give him a drink. But if we were to go on and read the story, and I encourage you to, maybe you have a little bit of chance here later in your groups to just see that he uses this so much more as just an opportunity to get a drink of water, but to really share hope and peace and a promise speaking into the woman's life in that moment. So Jesus was choosing, even though he was in this hard, difficult situation that he was dealing with, he still chooses to show up and be present with others. One more thing. I like to believe um, that it just makes the story a little richer as Jesus as um, a deeply devout Jewish young man would have immersed himself in the scriptures. There are times when he quotes a lot of scripture, but I also think for someone who quotes scripture much as he does, there's always scripture that is going through and possibly thinking about and reflecting upon and recalling scripture in those moments when you might need them most. And so there is no way I can make this case that in these type of moments, this might be what Jesus is thinking, but it might be, because I know that if my life can any way reflect maybe what Jesus was going through and thinking at times, that I know that that's what I do. That I can be riding in my car or out on a walk or eating a meal, and there'll just be a scripture that'll come to mind. And in that moment, it just speaks directly to what I need. And so I know when I'm in these moments, when I'm emotionally exhausted and overwhelmed, this sometimes is the scripture that comes to my attention. So this is Psalm 39, first 5 verses, and then I skip down there as you see just a couple verses at the end. And it says, "O Lord, you have examined my heart and you know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel and when I rest at home. You know everything I do. You know what I'm going to say even before I say it, Lord. You go before me and follow me. You place your hand of blessing on my head. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and leads me along the path of everlasting life." Let me read that last one again. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. I think of these moments, and it can be overwhelming and it can be stressful, and it just does so much inside of us to really wear us down. That has been a word that I've been carrying with me a lot in the last couple of weeks. Just this feeling of weariness. And in this psalm, um, all of those feelings and thoughts, the psalmist acknowledges, God, you see them and you know them. Search those things in me. And with all of that feeling and anxiety, point it out to me so that I can follow in the steps that lead me to everlasting life. Take all this mess, take all this struggle, and God, help me to move with it as well as through it. I've quoted Brene Brown a lot to you. She's an author, psychologist, researcher, does a lot around shame and vulnerability. And most recently, I've been reading a lot about her talking about wholehearted living. And she says, just as a passing comment in a book that I was reading recently, she just said, today I'm going to believe that showing up is enough. So let me say that again. Today I'm going to believe that showing up is enough. Sometimes that's all we can do. That's all we can muster to do, to just feel like it's simply get out of bed, put on real pants with like a zipper and a buttons, and brush our teeth and just go about life. Sometimes that's all we can muster to do because of the overwhelmed nature. But I believe there's hope in what God does in and through us, that showing up is enough, but we show up with a presence to know that God is carrying us, that God is meeting us in those moments. And just like Jesus being weary and exhausted, just showing up. And in that moment, he just says, "Can I have a drink of water?" And then that turns eventually into a conversation. I don't know if Jesus knew that's where the conversation, I don't know if he specifically knew that that was the well he needed to be at. I don't know. I'll leave that to a bunch of theologians and biblical scholars that can dissect and analyze that. But when the opportunity presented itself, he was able to still acknowledge that he was weary and overwhelmed, but he showed up. Sometimes that showing up is for ourselves, and sometimes it's for other people. But it starts with being able to show up for ourselves. So I hope this can be something that can get you thinking and sharing about this, that there's no denying the weariness and the exhaustion and the emotional fatigue that we're all continuing to experience. But it's what we do with it, but probably more importantly, it's what we allow God to do with it in these moments. So know today that I'm praying for you. I'm rooting for you. I want the best for you. If you need something, let me know. And I hope to see you real soon. Okay. Thank y'all. Bye.